Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to put on our ceramic bricks. What I'm going to do is use a popsicle stick as a ruler. You'll notice this isn't the house we're working on, this is a piece of foam. I actually already filmed this section, but my hands got in the way and you couldn't see what was going on the whole time, so I'm going to redo it here. It's good to practice on little scrap pieces of foam like this too. You'll see I worked on this earlier too. Anyhow, so I'm going to put down my ruler, get my Sharpie, and we're just going to put some lines like this, some horizontal lines. Now, this is a trick I picked up online on a terrain forum called Terragenesis. These are guys who actually don't make wargaming terrain so much as they just make like dioramas. They can do ludicrous things with this foam here. They're miracle workers over there. It's really impressive. This is just a small trick I stole from them, and there'll be a link to them in the video info. Put some lines for your bricks. We'll stagger them, as masons are keen on doing, so their buildings don't crumble. Take our pencil. Now what you want to do here, just like when you're cutting the foam, you want to have lots and lots of small motions rather than lots of big motions. It's like if you've ever sliced bread with a bread knife, you don't chop it in half like with a meat cleaver. You saw at it very gently. So it's the same thing. We're going to go over it very light at first, and then just keep going repeatedly. Because if you just try and dig in, you'll see like I just shredded that right there. So same thing, lots of little gentle motions. And so you're just going to go over all your lines like this. Now, you don't have to mark it out beforehand with a Sharpie. It makes it easier to have your bricks be uniformed, because if your lines get crooked, it means that the brick row right above will be narrower to accommodate your wide bricks below it and things like that. And so it kind of makes it look like they had customized bricks made for them or something like that. And so it comes off as kind of sloppy. Now, this isn't to say you can't get creative with the way your bricks are arranged, but it's something to be aware of that can happen when you're freehanding your bricks. Now, once you have the crease lines in, I'm doing this kind of sloppily. I haven't really put the proper time in to get all these creases in. But one thing you can do, after you get them in that far, pressed in real well, is you can start putting like cracks in the bricks. Might be kind of hard to see what's going on, and also sort of like round out the edges a little bit so they look more worn and real. I did this on a building I worked on earlier. You can see here there's cracks in the bricks. Shows it better once I've painted it, of course. Cracks here, chunks missing out of the bricks, that kind of thing. It makes it look very worn in and all that. What we have next up here, we're going to use a variation of a trick we've used before, popsicle sticks, you'll remember them, using our wire cutters or pliers to snap off the ends so they don't have these rounded ends, so it doesn't look like a summer camp art project. And when you're snapping off the ends, they don't need to be really uniform. Now, popsicle sticks do have a certain way of splintering that's very distinctive to them, and so you're going to want to be wary of that, but it's always cool when you get like the wood fiber showing with like a really rough split. It makes your wood look more ragged. So I'm going to go ahead and split the heads off of a bunch of these. And another thing you can do with them too, so you don't have lots of uniform planks. Ooh, that one broke really well. Look at that. Another thing you can do to mix them up is you'll see, even though these have ragged edges, they're basically the same length, because I just took the popsicle sticks and snapped their ends off. So one thing you can do to mix it up, take them in the middle, break them in half, make lots of odd-sized pieces of wood to work with. Alright, so what's up next is simple. This is probably the simplest part of tricking out our shack. I got a few planks here. This is by no means all the planks we're going to need, but it's enough for an example of what we're doing. We're just going to glue them on the side in rows and make sure that they sort of roughly meet the edges. So take your Elmer's glue, twist the cap, It's just like Mrs. Steinberg said, you know. Actually, I don't know what the fuck Miss Steinberg said. She said, you know, only use as much glue as you need. Because if you put too much, it'll ooze all over the place. And worse yet, your popsicle sticks will slide around on the side, and it's such a pain in the ass. Just a little streak of glue. And you'll see this one's poking over the edge. That's okay. It's not a big deal. You know, just imagine like Master Blaster is building this house or something, or those poor folks who lived in the oil rig and the Road Warrior. You know, none of their houses look nice. You know, every house in Bartertown was a run-down, ramshackle piece of shit. Another thing, you can see like right here between these two planks, there's a gap. It's okay if gaps like that show. But you don't want too many of them because they're kind of a pain in the ass to paint once you're done. So it's okay to let a few through, but if you let a lot through, you're going to regret it when you come to paint this thing. Because you got to make sure none of that pink foam is showing, otherwise, otherwise your ramshackle house looks very silly to have like pink cotton candy color poking through the planks. I'm probably going to need to cover up that bit. So what we're going to do now is a variation on the trick I used in the Cancer Runes video, the one where we were carving runes inside stone blocks we were making. This time what we're going to be doing is making a recessed doorway. So it'll look, when we're done, a little bit like this, where you can see there's actually a space in here and it's very dark, but it doesn't actually go very deep, it only goes in a little ways. So what we're going to be doing, just like in the Cancer Runes video, we're going to be destroying the environment because we'll be melting styrofoam. Do this in a ventilated room, blah blah blah, don't burn off your eyebrows, all that shit. Anyway, so you take metal screwdriver, Bic lighter. This is my post-apocalypse Bic lighter. I found it in a parking lot, so it's all rusted and dirty and scratched up. I feel like this is like what Mad Max would use, or the Vault Dweller or something like that. Anyway, so we heat up our screwdriver. And this can take a little while. I find it's helpful to breathe through your nose when you're doing this, and if you're talking, turn your head away, because you can blow the flame all over the place like this. Oh, crickets. Anyway, you get it real hot. And then what you do, take your piece of styrofoam. You'll notice this isn't the house we were working with earlier, because I filmed this segment earlier, and because I'm a really awful cameraman, and by awful cameraman I mean this is a one-man show, so I can't actually man the camera, things didn't get into the shot very well. We're going to heat it up again, yeah, and see how it's like smoking because there's styrofoam on the screwdriver, and then it boils back down. Now there's like more carbon and crap in the air around me. Yeah. So what we do is we dig out the outline of the door we want, and then we also have to dig in deep behind it. And anytime you're done using your screwdriver for this, I would advise dipping it in your water at least once so it's not super hot, because I have burned myself more than a few times by just setting it down and then like resting my elbow on it when I'm doing something else, and anyways, yeah, it's no good. I'm actually going to heat this thing up again because I shouldn't have cooled it off like that. A little premature of me. We're going to do this again because I didn't do it quite as deep as I meant to. Oh, there we go. We get that flare from melting off the styrofoam. Dig it in a bit deeper. Oop, there we go. Get that last bit loose. Alright, and I don't know if you can see it, but we have this the Pink Panther styrofoam cotton candy coming out of the door here. So these like little stretchy strings of the crap. Alright, now, another thing is, if you're using a screwdriver that you actually use to drive screws, when you're done with it, you're going to have all this crap on the end. I would advise either melting it off or at least softening it up and then wiping it off with like a paper towel or something. Because otherwise it's just going to have this really obnoxious crap all over it. So, when you're digging holes like this in a building to make a door, one thing you should always be mindful of is the scale of the people who are going to be using it. I've made this mistake in the past where I've made a doorway too low. I think the door on the bar is a good example of this. The bar looks really good, but the doorway is a little low for the characters that are going to be stepping through it. It's okay if it's on one of the buildings, but you don't want all your doors to end up like this. I don't mind my characters ducking through one door, but hopefully not all of them. So you'll see here, we made this one a little taller so they can stand more comfortably through it. And what we're going to do after that is create like a little frame around it, so it looks like at least a little bit of planning went into making this doorway, not just ripping a hole in the side. Now, another thing we're going to have to do is get all the little cotton candy strands out of there, because those make things very difficult when you're painting. They crumble off and get stuck to your paintbrush and end up floating in your paint water and just all this stuff you don't want. Now, the texture of the interior of this doesn't really matter. It doesn't need to be smooth, it doesn't need to be uniform, because we're going to be painting it black and putting it in a position where it doesn't get much illumination, so you won't be able to see any of the detail. It's just going to look like a dark interior. So it doesn't matter that it's this like weird lumpy stuff. So what we're going to be working on now is putting some posters on our terrain. Now, if you're watching a video about how to make Warhammer terrain, odds are you've probably played a collectible card game at some point in your life. I am no different. What we're going to be using right here is from the old Star Wars collectible card game. We have Docking Bay 94. Now, you don't need to make these out of trading cards. I just find it convenient, because even if it's a trading card game you still play, I'm sure you have no shortage of cards that you will not miss. As a Magic the Gathering player, I can say that I have plenty of shitty commons that I don't even need one of, and I actually have 50 of, or basic lands, or whatever. In addition to the regrettable card games everyone's had in their past that they don't play anymore, be it Pokemon cards, or Star Wars cards, or Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Anyway, we're just going to be cutting small pieces out of these. You actually want kind of sharp angles. You don't want the rounded edges we do on most stuff, the way we sand things off and cut off the corners. Just cut out a little square like this. Whoop. A little dab of glue. And poster. We're of course going to be painting these. You don't want the junk that's on there right now. Now, one thing I've seen some people do to mixed results is actually print out tiny posters. And there's pros and cons to doing this. One of the pros is you can have a very interesting detailed poster and put lots of cool logos and very fine text and things like that. But one of the problems is if you do this with like your home printer, odds are your picture will be somewhat pixelated given the scale of what we're looking at here, and it'll be very apparently printed out with a computer printer. So there's kind of a trade-off there. You get a lot better detail than you'd be able to accomplish by painting these by hand, but on the flip side, they're going to be very apparently printed out. So, it's something to think about. I like using these. You can use trading cards, or you can use index cards. I like the trading cards because they have this kind of laminate on them, so that the glue doesn't make them all wavy, you know, like when paper gets wet, it gets all ripply. The index cards do that, I find, when you glue them, and the trading cards don't do it quite so much. The glue doesn't seep into the paper. You can also use super glue for this too, but like we mentioned earlier, I don't have any super glue right now.